politician comes out and says, we know there's a problem, but this isn't the way to tackle it, the question is, what would you suggest? A strongly worded email? You actually start doing something, and these people might stop supergluing themselves to shit.
Hello, and welcome to this David Icke Connector videocast. I'm kind of on location, I guess you could say. I've been recording a series for the new Iconic media platform that is launched on November the 5th. Details in the link below this video. And I've been watching a video myself this week, in fact many of them as always, but particularly one in relation to the subject today. And that is a presentation from the Extinction Rebellion protests in London by a comedian called Jonathan Pie. It's not his real name, it's the one he uses for his YouTube videos and stage performances. And I've been looking at his stuff for years now, and he's built up a big following. And I've found myself nodding in agreement and laughing at what he's been saying, as he's basically railed against many aspects of the system and the way the world is going and the direction it's being taken. And I was very interested in many of the subjects that he's chose to talk about, because they are basically all in my books over the years as different aspects and expressions of a global tyranny, a global network of manipulation which takes many facets and forms, but collectively is taking the world in a direction that's becoming ever more blatantly obvious towards a point where human society will be subject to mass Orwellian, in fact beyond Orwellian because of all the technology involved, beyond Orwellian nightmare, tyranny, dystopia. And it's been entertaining and for me lovely to see someone picking out different facets of this collective agenda for human enslavement. For instance, one of his great targets is political correctness. And political correctness is very simple. It's manipulating the target population to silence itself. You see, if you want to control a population, you have to control its perception. And perception comes from information. It comes from discourse, dialogue. It comes from all these different forms of information that we receive from which we form our perceptions. So if you want to control perception, you've got to control the information that people receive. So immediately two dots connect. The dot of the ever more hysterical censorship coming out of Silicon Valley and political correctness. What is political correctness? It's dictating what people can and cannot say. So it is controlling the information that people can receive, giving different opinions and different angles and different outlooks on different subjects. And it is dictating what information people receive in just the same way that Silicon Valley is. In a different way, yes. But they're still involved in the same situation, which is denying people information that may allow them to form different perceptions about particular subjects. But to understand this agenda of human control, you have to understand that it doesn't operate just through one subject area. Its tapestry of control and manipulation encompasses the entirety of human society. And so what you realize is that different subject areas that appear to have no connection with each other whatsoever are actually fundamentally connected, because they're all expressions of this drive towards this Orwellian global tyranny. And I'll give you a great example. The video that I watched from Jonathan Pye this week was from this Extinction Rebellion protest in London, in which he railed against, quite vehemently, anyone who did not accept that human-caused climate change was a fact. And anyone who in any way criticized 16-year-old Greta Thunberg for going around the world talking at elite events in elite situations about the fact that the world needs to be transformed to save the planet from climate change. If you don't understand that there is an agenda, and that this agenda works through endless areas of human society, you can find yourself criticizing, railing against aspects of the agenda, while at the same time, because you don't know it is an agenda and how they all fit, you can rail in support of other expressions of the agenda. And that is what I suggest Jonathan Pye has done with this video. I have this phrase, know the outcome and you'll see the journey. If you know what the outcome of something is planned to be, you can see the journey towards it, the stepping stones all the time, day after day, week after week, towards that planned outcome. If you don't know what the outcome is planned to be, then these same happenings in the world appear to be completely random and completely unconnected. So you can, without knowing the outcome, you can see political correctness here, and you can see all the climate change propaganda here, and you can see this as bad because it's taking away human freedom, destroying comedy, political correctness. But you can talk in favor of the climate change propaganda when both are expressions of the same agenda. This is why connecting the dots is so absolutely vital. So we stop seeing the world as pixels and we start to see it as pictures. So I've talked about political correctness, and that's part of this agenda, which is to shut down human discourse, to shut down human opinion that is challenging where the world is planned to be taken and is being taken. And that's its part in the collective whole of human control. But political correctness is fundamentally connected to the climate change propaganda. And just look at this. If you look at the mentality that overwhelmingly drives the climate change, what I would call hoax. If you look at the mentality that drives political correctness, the mentality that drives the transgender activists at the extreme end, you're looking at the same mentality. Not only are these aspects of the same agenda for human control, they're expressions of the same mentality. And that's why it was like a what? To see Jonathan Pye, who's railed against political correctness, to be supporting climate change in such a vehement way. So let's look at this climate change. Know the outcome, and you'll see the journey. Political correctness is about shutting down freedom of speech so that you cannot expose the agenda by free speech criticism and exposure of it. But look at the climate propaganda. What happens to scientists who say it's not true? Scientists who say not only is carbon dioxide not a pollutant, it's the gas of life, but they say the problem is not that we've got too much carbon dioxide, it's that we haven't got enough, because carbon dioxide is what makes the vegetation of the natural world grow and flourish. And the world is getting greener now, fact, because the vegetation, the natural world, is having access to a little more carbon dioxide as before, but not as much as it had through much of the history of the Earth, when it was much higher than it is now. And therefore, what was the Earth in those days? A great mass ball of flourishing vegetation. So, carbon dioxide is the gas of life. We breathe it out. In effect, the natural world breathes it in and then breathes out or produces oxygen, which we then breathe in. It's a wonderful, wonderful, mutually beneficial system in which each is supportive of the other. But somehow, carbon dioxide has been so subjected to insane, factually ludicrous propaganda that it's now perceived as some kind of threat to human life, when it is the foundation in so many fundamental ways of human life. And like I say, what happens to scientists who say that about carbon dioxide? What happens to scientists who say this whole idea that we are heading for planetary catastrophe and the end of the world is utterly unsupportable insanity? They get silenced. They don't get onto the media platforms and the media in general that allows them to articulate a challenge, a factual information challenge to the prevailing narrative, which is that we're all going to die unless we fundamentally change human society and destroy all basic human freedoms and have a centrally controlled dictatorship to save the world. And what is that denial, that censorship of those scientists, except just another climate change expression of political correctness? What is political correctness saying? What are the woke people, not awake by the way, woke people saying to justify censorship? They're saying, I am right, and because I am right, anyone who says anything different to me must be wrong. And therefore, if they're wrong, what does their freedom of speech matter? They're wrong. What's it matter if they don't have freedom of speech? Why are they wrong? Because I am right and they're saying something different to me. Now let's take that political correctness and let's apply it to the climate change nonsense that's going on. They're saying the world is on the brink of destruction because of the gas of life, CO2, and that statement is correct It is indisputable. I am right. The scientists, this is what the system's saying collectively, not just the woke system. And therefore, the scientists that agree with that are the science equivalent of I am right. And because I am right, the scientists that question that are by definition wrong, and thus, what's it matter if they're silenced? Through climate change's equivalent of political correctness. And the idea of this agenda of control of information is to reach a point where the censorship is such and the I am right in position is such that people only ever hear, even in private conversations in the end, through political correctness, what the system wants them to see and hear. Everything else, silenced. That's where it's leading, step by step by step. That's why the censorship goes on getting more and more extreme until we reach that point. Know the outcome and you'll see the journey. Outcome, what I've just described in terms of silencing all other opinion. Stepping stones to the outcome, we're living it. So what is this climate change about in relation to this whole global conspiracy for human enslavement that I've been exposing for 30 years? Know the outcome, and you'll see the journey. The outcome that's desired is a centralized global dictatorship based on a world government, a world army imposing the will of the world government, a world currency, which would not be cash, it would be a single digital world currency, which was predicted in my books way back in the 1990s, and it's unfolding by the day. A world central bank dictating all global finance. The European Central Bank is a stepping stone to that. And a microchipped population connected to a global computer system, which I have been warning about since the said 1990s, early 1990s. And now it's unfolding, and Silicon Valley is bragging about the fact that it's coming. So that's what they want. Now, if you want to build a world like that, if you want to create a world like that, and you want to get people to accept a world like that, then you have to give them a reason to accept it. Because it's not really a world where communities all over the planet are dictated in the fine detail of their lives by a central dictatorship world government. It's not an easy sell, is it? So how do you sell it? You sell it through a mass manipulation technique that I've been talking about, again, for the said period since the 1990s, which I've dubbed problem, reaction, solution. You create a problem, you get the public to believe in the problem and the need for a solution to the problem, and then you offer the solution to the problem you have created, and that solution is to push the world in the direction you want it to go, a direction that would not have been acceptable without the problem to start with, which you've created covertly. But there's another version of that, which brings me to climate change. And I call this version no problem, reaction, solution, where you don't need a real problem, you need the perception of the problem, which then gets the public to accept the solution of the perceived problem. Give you a wonderful example, perfect, of no problem, reaction, solution. Weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. They told us there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. They knew there were no such thing. But they justified this no problem to lead to a solution to the no problem, which was the invasion of Iraq and the removal of Saddam Hussein and all the absolute catastrophe that has unfolded in the Middle East as a result of it. All that happened because they lied about a problem and then offered the solution to the problem they lied about. I have just described the climate change hoax. Jonathan Pye. When I was calling this climate change a hoax, way back, people asked the obvious question. Well, why are they doing that? Why would they do that? I'll tell you why. Because when you want to do something and you don't have an excuse to do it, i.e. all this centralization of global power, then you find a justification for it. And they found it. Climate change caused by human activity. Now, we've had climate change as long as there's been a climate. That's what the climate does, it changes. And when you have a situation where the impact on Earth temperature of the frickin' sun is systematically factored out of the computer models dictating where they say the world's going to go in terms of climate, you know you've got a scam on your hands. And what I said to the people who said to me, why would they hoax climate change? I said this way back. Because what they're going to do is they're going to say that they must centralize power, they must have control over the details of our lives to save the world from climate change. That's what they're going to say. And here we are. What Extinction Rebellion is demanding in terms of dramatic economic and other changes to human society, which would create mass deprivation and mass chaos. And I would say to many of those people, who I'm sure haven't even checked it out, who are supporting this Extinction Rebellion, look at what they're demanding is done as a solution to this problem. And you'll see, if you free yourself from the propaganda and the fear, we're all going to die. We're not. That the impact on human lives, not just in the West, but around the world, of what they are demanding it happens, will be catastrophic and create mass deprivation. It will destroy human society as we know it. And they've got all the idiot politicians on board, virtue signaling. And where it's going is where I said it would go when people ask the question, well, why would they hoax climate change? They are demanding the centralization of power, exactly what this agenda wants for mass human control. And they're demanding changes in society that will make current so-called free societies and democracies like Stalinist Russia or China today. If they want to have a go at people producing carbon dioxide, then the first people they should have a go at is countries like China and India. Why don't they go and do that in China? Because not only would they be arrested, not just symbolically, I've been arrested, I'm such a good person, look how virtue signaling I am, I'm being arrested. They'd be in the jail in China and the key would be thrown in the South China Sea. Oh, we're not going there. And there's another reason they're not going there. I mean the people at the center of it. It's because China is the blueprint of how they want the world to be. This cabal that's driving human society more and more and more into Orwellian tyranny. What is China except an Orwellian tyranny? So don't have a go at that. That's where we want to go. So go here. What we want to change and turn into that. So this is what the climate change agenda is all about. And this is why one of the leading lights of Extinction Rebellion, Gail Bradbrook, has such a history of promoting and working with big companies, very rich people, pushing an agenda which is now becoming known as the smart grid. The smart grid technological connection of everything. Connection to artificial intelligence of all human technology, so artificial intelligence controls it, not humans. And connection, which is what they're talking about quite openly now in Silicon Valley, connection of artificial intelligence to the human mind, so that artificial intelligence becomes the human mind, the ultimate level of total perceptual control. Why are people railing against, oh, climate change, we're all going to die? Pushing this agenda for the smart grid and 5G. 5G, a frequency which will devastate the natural world as well as humanity. Why are they doing that? Because we're back to problem, no problem, reaction, solution. The smart grid, which is specifically designed for the ultimate human control, is being sold as the answer to climate change. It's being sold as the way to, quote, a sustainable society. And this whole concept of sustainability is not what they tell you it is. It's a code word. A sustainable society would be great, where you don't take more than you replenish. Basic common sense. That's not what their version of sustainability means. It is a code word for something being operated through the UN called Agenda 2030. Now, operated through the UN. What else is being operated through the UN? The climate change propaganda through the International Panel on Climate Change. Coincidence? Not a frickin' chance. And I'll tell you something else that's not a coincidence. Ray Kurzweil of Google, over in the Devil's Playground, Silicon Valley, says that humans will start to be connected, brain connected to artificial intelligence in 2030. The UN agenda for using climate change as an excuse to transform human society and centralize power in every area of our lives is called Agenda 2030. And when you look at the period, the Extinction Rebellion cult, and people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in the United States, the congresswoman from New York, and her Green New Deal, which demands the transformation of the American economy in exactly the same way that Extinction Rebellion is demanding, they say we have a certain number of years to save the world. Where does that certain number of years take us? 2030. None of this is random. It's all connected and part of a global web of deceit and propaganda and perceptual manipulation to drive human society into the Orwellian and beyond Orwellian nightmare that I've been warning about for 30 bloody years. So, Jonathan Pye, it's great that you turn your ire on political correctness and point out that it is destroying freedom of speech and expression. But I would take a little bit of time longer to see that political correctness does not operate in isolation, nor do any of the subjects that you talk about, and certainly not the hoax of human-caused climate change. A hoax that claims we have 12 years to save the world. Brackets, utter frickin' bollocks. That 97% of scientists agree that humans are changing the climate in a way that's a danger to human life. Just check out where that came from, and you'll find it is, brackets, utter frickin' bollocks. So Jonathan, do a bit more research, mate, and realize that what you attack and what you expose in your videos are different aspects of the same agenda to the one that you so vehemently supported this week, which is that we must believe in human-caused climate change, and we must listen to 16-year-old girls who are simply being exploited by adults to convince the young generation of what this agenda wants the young generation to believe in, to fear, and thus support the actions that the agenda wants. To realize that while people say, I'm protesting to protect my children's future, what they're actually doing is demanding that their children's freedom is deleted for the rest of their lives, because that's where this is going, unless people wake up, and pretty damn bloody quick. And Jonathan, you would be a good start, mate. No, I will not support the propaganda of climate change, because it's bollocks. It's a scam. And I will never stop saying so until the world finally wakes up to it.